anything or want to go over anything, you can access the recording in the learning management system. Also, another reminder about the prizes that we'll give away. So if you ask questions, if you answer questions, contribute to the session, that might include presenting when you're in your small group, then there's prizes up for grabs. And there's just a reminder that the chat is available. So if we want to ask any questions, that's a good way to do it. Okay, yesterday we went through some of those key terms in the introduction to safety and design. So today is more about its application in line with the council safety in design procedure. So by the end of this module, you'll be able to understand the procedure, including how to assess risk and how to report in line with the safety and design procedure. And we'll be applying the safety and design procedure as part of that design team, or in this case today, a nice small group. So to get things underway today and get you thinking about safety and design again, I've got a bit of a video that I've hit play on already. So hopefully you can see that. It's 12 minutes, but we're not going to look at the whole thing. So when I was putting the module together, I came across this video. So I'm just going to skip forward a little bit and you'll get an idea of what's going on. So this is from 1979. I think it's a BBC documentary from England. And this fellow who's climbing this ladder up a chimney has been engaged or contracted to demolish the chimney. So this is a good example of safety and design not having been front of mind when the structure was designed. I'll give them a pass though, because I'm guessing it was the early 1900s when this was designed. So not to criticise the designers back at that time, but just to illustrate how much has changed, I guess, from 100 years ago, from even 20 or 30 years ago, to where we are today in our consideration of safety and design. So you can see him there climbing a ladder to get to the top. He's not tethered to that ladder at all. And I think he's in some way rigged the ladder so it is affixed to the structure, but there was no allowance, I guess, for him to do that. He had to sort of craft something on his own. So this guy is a bit of a celebrity, or was a bit of a celebrity back in the day as a result of this documentary, and he received an honorary doctorate in MBE as well. So you can see him climbing there. I'm just going to jump forward a little bit to when he's sort of he's near the top, and he's got his scaffolding there all set up, so he can demolish the structure brick by brick. Yeah, Fred Dibner, that's his name. That's right, Jeremy. Yep. So he did a lot of other things, I think, and this was sort of this is probably what made him a celebrity, or made him well known. There he goes over the top. I'm not sure how you could do that day in, day out. But and there he is, and he does. There you go. You can see the height there. He does start demolishing that brick by brick. There's a bit of a chute down the bottom where he pushes all the bricks in, and there is he's crafted a hole at the bottom where all the bricks just fly out to the end, and hopefully no one is around the bottom there. So yeah, there we go. So that's everything just pouring out the bottom there. So things have changed, thankfully, from those days. So if there's any ways that you can think of where you could have eliminated or minimised the risk associated with demolishing that chimney, then just throw some into the chat there. All right, I'll move on. So remember, we talked about safety and design yesterday. I introduced this definition of safety and design. So I'm just going to refresh everyone's memory with that. So it requires a designer to ensure as far as reasonably practicable that a structure is designed to be without the risks to the health and safety of persons who, at a workplace, use the structure for the purpose for which it was designed, construct the structure, carry out any of those reasonably foreseeable activities at a workplace, such as maintenance of the structure, or are in the vicinity of a workplace and are exposed to any of those above activities. We talked about what a workplace is. So a workplace is any place where work is carried out, includes places where workers may go or are likely to be while at work. Some examples there. We talked about the structure, defined that a structure is anything that is constructed. It could be fixed, it could be temporary, it could be permanent. So there's quite a broad definition of what a structure is. It's not just a building or a bridge or something like that. We talked about all those roles that that may fall under the definition of designer in safety and design context. So it includes the people on your screen there that are preparing sketches, plans, or drawings, but it also includes people that make decisions about about a structure that can affect the health and safety of persons that work on around that structure. And we talked about what is reasonably practicable, requires consideration of those items there. Likelihood of exposure to the hazard, degree of harm or consequence from exposure to that hazard, the availability and suitability of ways that you can eliminate or minimise the risk, and the cost, and whether that cost is grossly disproportionate to the risk that's being considered. So you've got to weigh up all those things to determine whether something is reasonably practical. Then we're going to run through the safety and design procedure with reference to the typical design stages that you would have in a design life cycle. So that's planning, concept design, and detailed design. And remember, we ran that poll yesterday that told us that safety and design should be considered as early as possible in the design process. So that requires consideration in the planning stage of a design project. So this is a summarised version of the key tasks required in the safety and design procedure, and we're going to go into each one of these in more detail. So everything is pretty constant across our design phases initially, and then you'll note there's a difference when we get to, I guess, how we document or assess safety and design. There's a difference between our planning stage and our concept and detailed design stages. So you can see there, when you're in the planning stage, we will summarise our safety and design considerations. I'll talk about that in more detail. And when we're in the concept and detailed design stage, we're undertaking a structured risk assessment and preparing a safety and design report. So I'm going to go through each of those tasks in a little bit more detail now. So the first task we've got is to establish the design context. So we're going to talk about in that, we've got to understand what the purpose of the structure is, its intended use, service requirements, service life, any financial constraints that are relevant, and any related projects. So just on that last point, I think there was a question yesterday from Josh about if there is a, say, a lighting design being completed externally for some road lighting, and that's being completed by Energex. So as Josh used in his example, and internally, the design of the road upgrade is being completed by council. Well, that you could consider that a related project. So one would need to consider the other, and not completely go, well, that's Energex is doing that, so I don't have to worry about that. So you would identify those related projects to your design. It's also important to do this because I guess it brings everyone into the same I guess level of knowledge when it comes to understanding the design, understanding what the project objectives are. And this stuff might already exist in a project brief or scoping document, so it's probably already there. You've probably already given something when you start a design project, so it's important to confirm that when you undertake your safety and design assessment. So when you're bringing in other designers or workers into the safety and design process, everyone can be on the same page. Now, the next task is to establish the risk context. And again, for the same reason as the design context, we do this so again everyone is on the same page. So we're going to identify workplace hazards, any relevant legislation, codes of practice, or standards that will be relevant, and most importantly, identify all the ways that the structure will become a workplace. So that's quite important because remember, our safety and design is all about when our structure becomes a workplace. The next step, just as we spoke about yesterday, is to identify the skills and competencies that will need to be included in the design team, or will need to be consulted as part of the safety and design process to make sure that we have a complete understanding of the design that we're working on. So projects can be, it can be quite complex. A lot of design disciplines need to be involved to produce a design, and we need to make sure that they're all identified and represented in that safety and design process. Specialist advice may be that those design disciplines are not, within council or not within not within a design team. It's not a structure that council has typically designed or got experience with. So you might need to use some of that. Might need to call in some specialist advice if that experience is not available in your safety and design process. So once you've identified particularly the need, all the skills required, any specialist advice that may need to be called upon, then we're going to establish something which we've termed a safety and design consultation group. So it's going to include your designers and to represent all the skill areas associated with a design. And it's also going to include representatives from perhaps construction, asset maintenance, asset management and maintenance. So remember that there's a requirement to consult with workers. So bringing them into a safety and design consultation group that you've established for your safety and design assessment is the way to do that. Just to remember again, our definition of designers from yesterday. So, and I've gone over it already. So when I say designers, I mean people that prepare plans and sketches, but also anyone that makes decisions that can affect the health and safety of workers. So that takes us up to that establishing the safety and design consultation group. And at this point, we will look at the differences between what you'll need to do if you're undertaking a concept or detailed design and what you'll need to do if you're in the planning stage of a project. So a risk assessment is required for concept and detailed design projects. And that should be undertaken before 50% design progression and then updated again at around 90% design progression. Remember, it's important that that we undertake this as early as possible in each of our design phases, because that gives us the greatest opportunity to identify risks, assess them, and then take any sort of corrective action or make any changes because of the outcomes of that risk assessment. So that's why we're identifying that a risk assessment must be completed before you reach 50% design progression. We'll cover the risk assessment process in more detail as well before we move into our small group exercise. So we've done a risk assessment before we've reached 50% design progression, and then we'll take that to a safety and design consultation group. We've formed our group. We've undertaken an initial review, initial preparation of a safety and design risk assessment, and that could be done by the project manager or primary engineer or designer or planner that's involved in the project. So we'll have an initial risk assessment completed, and we'll bring that safety and design consultation group together to review that pre-populated risk assessment there, and then confirm the risk and the risk ratings, identify any new risks, because remember, by bringing that larger group together, that includes all our design disciplines that are involved in the design of the structure, and also workers, you're going to find people with additional knowledge, and there'll be new risks that are identified because of those people that are involved. We're going to identify control measures, and then rate risks with those control measures. And then from that, we'll have an understanding of any items that require further consideration in our design. Remember, our risk management approach is so far as is reasonably practicable. So by undertaking our risk assessment, if there is something that can be done, then we need to go ahead and do that to further minimise or eliminate, if possible, risks associated with safety and design. Just back up here to the top there. So if we're in a planning stage project, because of our level of design definition, typically a lot less in a planning project, what we'll do there is that we'll bring that safety and design consultation group together and identify at a high level some safety and design considerations that we can see that will need to be identified in those later concept and detailed design stages. So just because we're in planning, we still need to consider safety and design, because even some of those early stage decisions made in the planning stage can have an impact on the safety of workers, can have an impact in how we progress with our concept and detailed design. When you bring the safety and design consultation group together, you might have a large number of participants. So there's a number of ways you can hold a workshop, as everyone would be aware these days. So it can be on Teams, can be in person. You can use, if you've got a large number of participants, you can use something like a mural board that allows people to contribute all at the same time, so you're not sort of going through a much slower process. That sort of lets you look at risk by risk. So depending on your audience, the size of your group, there might be different ways that you can conduct the safety and design workshop. So in terms of, yes. Hey,
sorry, just before you move on, I don't know if you covered it, just to clarify a question. Oh, yeah. Would project managers also be classed as designers because they're making the project decisions?
Yes, yeah, that's right. If they're making decisions that affect the health and safety of workers as it relates to the structure, then they would be, as part of that definition of design is for safety and design. Yep. Thanks, Chris.
And particularly if they're supervising a site and there's a change that needs to be made, which is what sometimes occurs with our project managers on council projects.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. So any variations to a structure, any that counts as design. So important to go back to that original designer and seek that advice. Otherwise, you take on those responsibilities if you're instructing changes to a design. Okay, so I can't remember where I stopped there before. So just talking about some of the reporting requirements on this slide. So when we're in planning, we're undertaking a safety and design summary. So that's that'll be included in some sort of planning report or document, and it's important that's somewhere captured somewhere so that when the project progresses to concept or detailed design, it's somewhere that's going to be found and seen and considered in the next stage of the project. For concept and detailed design, a formal safety and design report is to be prepared. And again, that'll be important because that'll be a standalone document and it will be part of the information package that will be transferred to those workers that will construct the structure, maintain or operate the structure. Also, if a design, say a concept design is prepared internally by council and the detailed design is going externally, then that safety and design report will be passed from the concept design, in the internal concept design, to the external detailed design consultant. Next. All right, so now we're going to move into safety and design risk assessment. So we use the term risk very frequently. So the Australian standard defines the definition of risk as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. It's a very nice sounding definition. So I guess our objective in safety and design is to maintain the good health and safety of persons that will use work on our structure. We express risk as a combination of likelihood, the likelihood of an event and its consequence, and we'll use a risk matrix to assess the likelihood and consequence of an event and determine a level of risk. So likelihood, you may have seen these sort of descriptors before to describe likelihood. And they can range from anywhere which is almost certain to rare. Almost certain has a frequency of once a day to once a week, so it's very much assured of happening. Whereas rare has a frequency of once every 10 years or even less frequently than that. Move on to our consequence table. So this describes the level of a health impact associated with that consequence, from catastrophic, which is a loss of life or permanent incapacitation. Moderate is an injury requiring medical attention, so that's likely to be a doctor visit or a hospitalisation. Minor first aid, and insignificant is injury not requiring a first aid treatment. Okay, so this is our safety and design risk matrix, and it aligns with the risk matrix that that council uses for its project risk register. So it's not reinventing the wheel here. So we use that combination of likelihood and consequence to arrive at a risk level. So for example, if we have a likelihood of almost certain, so that was once a day to once a week, and a moderate consequence that was something requiring medical treatment, then we would have an extreme risk rating. So it's fairly straightforward. I'm sure many of you on the call have used a risk matrix many times. So we're going to run a bit of a risk assessment scenario here. And as a group, we're going to undertake a risk assessment. So the risk assessment exercise, I'll describe a scenario, and together we'll just come up with a risk level of risk together. So in this case here, I've got a picture of a road design, and there's it includes a median. The median is wide enough to be landscaped, so there's been a decision made to landscape the median. So let's assess this risk that I've identified. So I've identified the hazard as the hazard as the live traffic next to the median, and the risk description is a workers are struck by an errant vehicle. So those workers are maintaining that landscaped median. So when we describe a risk, it's important to describe the hazard, which is the source of harm, and then the risk event, which is the event which causes the harm to eventuate. So a hazard in this case is live vehicles, vehicles in a live traffic lane, so moving traffic, and the risk that I've described is that a vehicle leaves the live traffic lane into the median and strikes a worker that is maintaining that landscape median. So we're going to undertake this risk assessment using a poll. We're going to do it as a group, and we'll fire up that poll, that first poll, Loretta. So the first poll is going to ask us to estimate the likelihood for this risk. Acknowledging I haven't given you all the information that you would normally have at hand when you undertake a risk assessment. So but that's all right. We can still it can still progress in this way. So if you were considering likelihood, you might have more information. You might be looking at the speed of traffic, asking yourselves, well, how often does the landscaping need maintenance? All those sort of questions, and you'd have that information if you're in a full design project. So as a group, those are the options there. Let's see what we think the frequency associated with this risk event is. So we've got anything from almost certain, once a day, to once a week, everything down to rare, which is once every 10 years or less frequently. We are not considering any mitigations here. So this is just as I've described it. This is without mitigation. So the next step is we'll assess the risk with mitigations, and I'll give you some mitigations there to consider as well. So how are we going there? Almost got everyone on that poll. So give it another few seconds. Okay. All right, let's end the poll and share the results. So we've got share the results. So we've got everywhere from almost certain, likely. So most responses are around that, possible and unlikely. So once a month to once a year to once every 10 years is unlikely. And that's a very broad sort of period of time. But I'll just note down possible as the likelihood here, and let's go on to the next part of that risk equation. So it is the consequence. So let's put up the next poll, and together we'll consider what the consequence of this associated with the risk event is. So if you had all the information here, you might be asking yourself, well, what's the speed of the traffic in that adjacent lane without any mitigation in place? Just incidentally, if we're thinking about the safe system approach, then the safe system threshold speed for a vehicle and a vulnerable road user, which would be a worker in this case, is 30 kilometres per hour. So any impact that involves a vehicle greater than 30 kilometres per hour with a road user is likely to result in a fatality or serious injury. Okay, we're almost there. Just give it another 10 seconds for those final responses. Okay, I think we can end the poll and share the results. Excellent. Okay, so we can see that most of the responses are within that catastrophic and major level of consequence, and I'd certainly agree with that. I think it's going to be up in that band, particularly if we're thinking about a road with speeds, of 60 kilometres per hour or greater, or even a road with 50 kilometres per hour. As I mentioned, that safe system threshold speed is 30. It's quite slow. So the further we are, the higher the speed. Obviously, the higher likelihood of a significant catastrophic consequence there. So I'll note down major there, because we've got a few more responses in the major than the catastrophic, and we'll move on and we'll determine a level of risk there. So have I got the right pen on? Yes. So we had possible, we had major, so just working out what that level of risk is extreme. Okay, now we're going to look at that same risk, but we're going to consider a mitigation in place. Okay, let's move on then. So the mitigation that I've identified is before I do that, let's look at this. So this is my pre-webinar rating of that risk, and I said unlikely and catastrophic. So I was sort of one either side of what the group assessment was there, and there's expected, a variation in risk assessment that we've seen in those responses is more than expected. It's I don't think you can get everyone to agree. So that's one of the reasons that it's important to particularly get all the knowledge and skill areas together in design and in consultation with workers, and in a way that we can do that, and we can improve our risk assessment by having more people contribute to that risk assessment. So that was mine. Now let's look at that risk with a mitigation or control measure in place. So the control measure I've identified here is closure of the median lane and a reduced speed limit. And that would all be done under a temporary traffic management. So there'd be a traffic traffic management plan, traffic guidance scheme developed for that control measure. So let's pop up the next poll, and let's now assess that risk with the mitigation in place. So here is the likelihood. And we'll just go for that. Same options as before, obviously. So control measure is something obviously that modifies the level of risk, and by implementing the controls, we're seeking to obviously reduce the level of risk. Okay, getting there on our responses. We've got another few seconds. Wonderful. Okay, let's end the poll and share the results. Thanks, Loretta. Okay, so everything's shifted there considerably. So now the group thinks that rare is the most appropriate likelihood there. We've still got some in the likely and possible and unlikely range. And as I said, I haven't given everyone enough information to sort of accurately assess this risk. So everyone's probably got a slightly different picture in their mind about how often that landscaping is being maintained and what sort of work arrangement is in place. But I'll note down rare as the response from the group. Let's move on to I guess assess the consequence with that control measure in place. So we can just go on to the next poll. There we go. So same options as before. Just while we're doing that, I see a question in the chat from Jeremy. So who's liable for the final design decisions in a safety and design context if an incident occurs at a later date? So obviously there would be an investigation around the risk, and that I guess that would try and identify the causes of an incident. Not a lawyer, so I don't want to speculate too much about some of those questions about liability. Mark, I'm not sure if you've got any thoughts on the question of liability.
Well, it depends on if the site was a construction site at the time of the incident, because Jeremy's comments is that if an incident occurs at a later date, so if that's during a maintenance thing, like I guess looking after a landscape median, then yeah, potentially, again, I'm not a lawyer either, but that may be a safety and design thing, but that needs to be mitigated for a maintenance purpose during that design process. But if it's an incident that occurs because a person trips over something, well, then that's not a workplace issue. So,
yep, that's right. Yep, and council is the I guess if we're talking about a design, council is the PCBU that is undertaking the design. So the reason that we're implementing this process is that so council can meet its obligations under the Work Health and Safety Act, discharge its obligations as a PCBU that is undertakes design work. So that might partly answer that question, but it's probably one best answered by a lawyer, perhaps. But good one, Jeremy.
I think Jeremy's already got a prize.
You can
I think Loretta's throwing a prize his way already. So for now, naming Fred Dibner.
Oh, okay. Oh, that was Loretta. Yeah, I see that in the chat now. Okay. Yes. Okay.
I thought I'd get it started.
Okay.
Right,
You did. Yeah, very good. All right. We can, well, I'll leave it between Loretta and Marcos to adjudicate as to whether Jeremy gets the second prize. Staying out of that one. So let's end the poll and share those results. See what we have there. So we've got most of the response around major and moderate there. So slightly a couple more responses for major. So let's pencil that in. So interestingly, that's the same level, I guess, of risk that we had without the mitigation. So remember, I guess I did mention that safe system threshold speed is 30. So even with a reduced speed limit of 40, it's not getting us below that safe system threshold. So maybe a few people had that in the back of their mind when they score the consequence as major. But so we'll go rare and major there, and let's go ahead and rate that risk. So get my pen working again. So we've just we said rare. So it's down here, and we said major. So that's so major up there. So that gives us a high level of risk. Excuse me. And then before we had possible and major. So we were up here before. So we sort of moved down from extreme to high. So we've got to ask ourselves: is there anything more that can be done to further minimize or even eliminate that risk? And remember, when we're talking about traffic, we might be thinking about diversions. That would eliminate risk, but we've got to consider whether that's suitable, I guess reasonably practical, and whether that mitigation is suitable for the location that we are considering. So excellent work. I think I've just got one more slide here, which is my assessment, and I think rare and major. So that's what the group thought as well. So we're aligned in that case. I think that's the first time I've aligned with the group there. So very, very good. So again, we've got to ask ourselves whether enough has been done to eliminate or minimise that risk. Remember the principle of so far as is reasonably practicable. Before, we're going to have a small break now, but if you've got any other ideas of ways to eliminate or minimise that risk we just assessed, pop them in the chat. We'll have a break in a second and then come back from our small group exercise. Loretta, do you want to just have a check in with LMS and make sure that everyone can use LMS before we dive into that small group activity?
Yep, so hopefully everyone has been able to log in. If you haven't, let me know. I will help you out. But I feel like, most people have. I'll just quickly share my screen anyway.
Yep.
All right, you can see that there?
Yes, yep.
Yep, excellent. All right, so we are in module 2. So just getting ready, making sure you've been able to log in successfully, and we're looking at the small group exercise after the break. So ensure that you've got access to that folder. It's just loading up for me. So I probably had it on pause for a little while too long. Yes, so just to, I guess, do you want me to quickly introduce this part now while we've got everyone's attention?
Yeah, let's do that. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So after the break, what we'll do, we'll put you all into breakout rooms. What that means is you'll be randomly assigned a room number with a group of people, maybe 4 or 5 or maybe 6. We'll see how that goes. But once you're in that room number, you then are assigned the same number as the group number. So if you're in room 1, you need to do the exercise for group 1. If you're in room 2, then it's group 2, and so on. So that's what we'll go through. We will have to also download the risk assessment as well. So ensure you click on here and have that ready. And then whatever group you're in that you'll be allocated, then you click on those according to your group. Paul and Marco might pop into your rooms just to sort of check in, but also what you need to remember is you need to either volunteer yourself or volunteer someone in the group to speak afterwards when we come back into the main room. Someone from the group does need to share their screen and talk through, the results basically. And I'll give out a prize if you do want to share your screen and speak on behalf of the group. So,
whilst we're there, Loretta, would you mind just opening one of those Word documents?
Sure. Yep.
And that'll just let people have a look at what they've got to complete in that Word document. I'll go through it after the break as well. So it's just going through some of those tasks that I went through earlier. So if you're group 1, you've opened this Word document. Your project is that cliff stabilisation project at Scarborough. And I've provided that design context for you there, so you don't have to worry about that, but a little bit of knowledge there for you. So the next step would be to identify the risk context, and what we're looking for here is to identify the ways that the structure will become a workplace, and then identify at a higher level some initial workplace hazards that you can see. Then lastly there on that Word document, identify your safety and design consultation group members. So that can be your designers, whatever design disciplines that you feel will need to be involved for that design project. Any specialist advice that you may need to seek and then other representatives. So very important part, this one here. So making sure you consult with workers. They could be from your construction team or maintenance, asset management, could be other workers as well that you'll want to involve. So that's your Word document. And then the other part of that is undertaking the risk assessment. So we'll move through this relatively quickly. I'd suggest spending about 5 or 6 minutes on the Word document, and then the rest of the time you can spend using undertaking the risk assessment. So I'll try and reshare my screen again. Okay, think about that. Let's have a little break now for 5 minutes before we dive into that small group exercise. So it's 2:47 now. Let's just come back together at 2:52, everyone. So I'll see you shortly. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you got a drink before we dive into this small group exercise. Looks like Chris has been awarded a prize with emoji reactions there by some colleagues. I'm not sure if I've seen that before, Loretta, but yeah, very
good team. Good team.
Good teamwork.
Nominate team members.
Yeah. Okay, so that was our break. So this is our small group exercise. So these dot points here are just the steps that I went through before the break. So in the Word document that you will access in the LMS, you'll go through. And the design context is populated there for you. You'll identify the risk context, and you'll identify safety and design consultation group members. So that's in your Word document. And then you'll undertake the safety and design risk assessment, much in the way that we did there as a whole group. You'll identify anywhere from between 2 and 4 risks, populate your risk register, and assess those risks, and then identify any mitigations that you can around those risks, and then assess the risks with the mitigation in place. So that last one there is done in that Excel workbook. So we'll break into small teams. We'll give you about 20 or so minutes in a small group. Loretta will be able to sort of recall everyone back, and we'll give you some warnings with some time to go. And as Marco and I sort of pop into the small group room and see how you're going, if you want some more time or need some more time, we can add a few minutes to that. So probably about 5 or 6 minutes on that Word document to identify risk context and your safety and design consultation group members, but probably spend most of your time undertaking that risk assessment. So let's see if we can.
We've got 23 people, so shall we go with 5 groups? There'll be about 4 or 5 people in each group.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yep. Yeah. All right, so we'll go with 5 groups. I'll allocate those now.
Yep. Okay, let's go.
Right. Randomly assigning now, and please, once it pops up on your screen, you do need to click join.
There we go.
Just looking at the list there, Jared's gotten lucky. He's gotten the cliff stabilisation project, which is his job.
Okay, on a top flight safety and design report completed.
Yeah.
We can always move him if you want, Marco.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
Tom's not here today because he was the one that did the Cedar Creek Road design, so he won't be able to. He unfortunately couldn't make it today because he's on holidays.
Josh and Ryan are still with us. So,
Retta.
Hey,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Could you send me that thing, please, again, to join?
Oh, it should be on your,
Yeah, yeah. I'm group 4. I did join it, but then I must have clicked something else and went out.
Let me see if I can do it on my end. Group 4. I don't have a way to resend that.
Okay.
It should be on your screen. I think can you click on the little more button or the little 3 dots anywhere?
Just a minute.
Should be somewhere where it says to join again.
3 little buttons. Right.
Yeah, there's no way for me to resend it to you. I can only move you to another room, which means then there'll be too many people.
Could you move him to a room and move him back?
Oh, okay. Join breakout room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Just wondering
Marco,
whether we can move. Yeah, I was just going to say whether we can move someone out of room 2 or 3 to room
I think
4.
3. I think 3. Should I do you want to pick someone and I'll just move them, or?
I'll do Shannon because I like to annoy Shannon.
All right, let's move Shannon to room 4.
Yeah.
Moving now.
Yep, she's joined there.
I'll just jump in there and let her know why we moved her.
Okay. All right. So it looks like we've still got Josh, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It said join and didn't join, so room 2.
Yeah. So if you can find where it says like join breakout rooms, there should be an option. Yeah, and click that again.
Yep, he's there. Great.
Excellent.
All
right, I might just pause the recording now.
Yep. Each of the groups starting at group 1. And if someone who is nice and brave would like to share with everyone, so share your screen so everyone can see, and just take us through we really want to focus on those risks that you've identified. There we go. Who's shared that one? Thank you to whoever that is.
That's
but
Bennett.
This is Bennett. Thank you, Bennett.
Bennett wins a prize.
There we are. So this is the cliff stabilisation project at Scarborough. So if you could take us through your hazards, risks, how you've assessed them, and your control measures that you've identified, Bennett.
So we identified construction machinery on top of the cliff for profiling, and the risk could be something plant or personnel falling. So that will fall in the construction category, and without any measures in place, that's likely, and it's going to be catastrophic. Some control measures be geotech investigation, establish exclusion zone for workers, the selection of plant and counterweighting said plant, and then working during favourable conditions, such as not within the rainy periods. And then that would drop the likelihood down, but it would still be pretty bad if it did happen. So it stays as a high risk.
Yes, so unlikely is once a year, it's every 10 years. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
No, that's fair. Yep.
Construction at the base of the cliff, the risk would be from things falling from above, plant or personnel. Again, falls into the construction category. It's likely and could be a major impact. So some of the control measures would be spray treat exposed soft soil, do proper site prep, geotech inspections, staff to wear PPE, and minimize exposure to workers on site by preparing construction materials off site that can be. And then that would drop it down to a medium risk.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's an interesting one because it's Jared, I think, was involved in the project, but part of the project is to remove that loose debris at the crest of the cliff and also in the midsection of the cliff. So naturally, I guess that removal of materials is going to cause some of it to fall to the base of the cliff. So that's an almost could be an almost certain descriptor there. So a very important one to consider and develop control measures for. Yeah. Yep. Wonderful. All right. That was perfect. Thank you, Bennett. Let's move on to group 2. So the Cedar Creek Road upgrade, Cedar Creek. So we had Alex, Josh, Loz, Nick, Sarah as part of that group.
Yep. I can just share my screen for that one.
Yep.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we can see your risk context and your group members and your risk assessment.
Yeah, brilliant. So we had Josh in the team who worked on this project, and the 2 main risks that we came up with was obviously a vehicle strike because it was quite a high traffic road. So the likelihood and impact was quite bad and quite likely. But as we moved through closing the median lane and then reducing the speed limit as well as signalising the area, it does move down to still a high residual risk rating, but is mitigated down quite a lot, which is good. And then the second risk that we came up with was just a fall risk. So Josh noted that there was an area where workers could fall down a gully right next to where they were working, which was possible and a fair area to fall, so like quite high risk. But yeah, to mitigate that, it would be some temporary fencing around the area, even some working platforms to hold up the edges. And then with those control measures in place, it brings the risk down to low, which is fantastic.
Yes, yep. Thank you for that. And I think this road is a one-way in, one-way out road. So Josh might be able to confirm that. So there's, in terms of your route control measure around vehicle impacts to workers, it's not possible, it's not reasonably practical to fully close that road and eliminate that risk. Is my understanding, because people need to access their homes and be able to access the outside world as well. So I think that looks as though that risk has been mitigated as far as it sort of reasonably practically can be mitigated there. So that is good. And the other one around the gully, I think some of the other groups sort of identified, maybe without the knowledge that Josh has on the project, identified vehicle plant rollover as a risk, as they too identified that there was a steep sort of slope away from the road at some points there. So it's similar to what you've identified in your second risk. Great. Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. Shall we go to group 3? So this is the bioretention decommissioning at Bray Park. And so we've got Amin, Chris, Jeremy, Jess.
I'll share that one.
Vaughan. Who's this?
So Vaughan's taken the captaincy here.
Vaughan, there you go.
Yep. So here's a quick snip of the project, but it's decommissioning the bioretention. So removing the sandstone block retaining wall and putting in a pipe under ground. So the risk that we sort of identified was the depth of the trench, which is about 2 meters. So there's a potential for collapse of the trench on the workers, and it's demolition or disposal. So that's pretty likely that could happen with that depth of trench. And we thought that it would be a major impact because it is potentially life-threatening, but not necessarily catastrophic. So that's not guaranteed that you'll lose your life, but could affect you majorly. So the control measures that we put in place were that we'd consult with the geotech consultant and then install shoring and also road traffic barriers because it's right next to Gillam Crescent, which would be actioned by the project manager or construction manager. And we thought once the shoring's in place, it would reduce the likelihood to unlikely. There's still a chance that something could happen, but it's very unlikely that it would. And the impact would be minor to the workers in that case.
So that might be limit, I guess, the collapse of the trench with that shoring in place. So it could be some sort of collapse of part of some debris that gets dislodged to result in that impact. And I just want to touch on something that you said there initially when you were talking about the impact, the consequence, and you sort of said it was major, but it also acknowledged that, well, it could be catastrophic, but you went with major, and that's an important point. I guess when we're undertaking risk assessments, we're sort of taking a view of the most likely outcome, particularly in relation to impacts. So it is possible when we look at risks that we can sort of look at a very worst case scenario and identify a very high sort of consequence. So I think I like the way that you've approached that. You sort of said, well, it's potentially that it could be catastrophic, but I think the most likely outcome is a major impact in this case. So I like your thinking there. It's something that I meant to point out earlier. When we undertake a risk assessment, we're thinking about the most likely outcome, not necessarily the worst case potential outcome. So thanks for that. Did you end up thinking about another risk at all?
We were just trying to get our head into the project first to see what was going on, and then this is about where we got to. But obviously, it's right next to Gillam Crescent as well, so there are traffic issues there as well. And I think we were talking about installing barriers or something just to mitigate that risk as well.
Yeah, it's a slightly different project, I guess, and one that takes a little while to sort of get your heads around. Some of the other groups identified, I guess, because you had those pedestrian paths, you got the road on one side of that detention basin, so they had identified that there could be an exposure from the construction work to adjacent path users. So talked about vehicle diversions, barricades to separate people from the work site, particularly when that fence is removed. So that's considering that you've got a workplace, but you also got to consider the exposure from those workplace activities to others as well. And in this instance, we're working around people's homes, pathways, and a bus stop there as well.
Yeah.
Excellent work. Okay, thanks for that, group 3.
Looks like Jeremy's got a prize pit as well because he's handing out prizes.
I saw something on the chat there. I couldn't make it out. Okay,
I'm
see
just
where we're going
biased for group 3, so that's why Vaughan did a beautiful job anyway.
You're all winners. I think you better rein this in, Loretta. I think we've created something.
I like it. But we'll move on to group 4, who's volunteering for a prize.
Alrighty, so
Andrew,
I'll share my screen on part of group 4. Can we all see the SID there?
Yes. Yep.
Great.
Wonderful.
So we came up with 2 hazards to begin with. So working within the road formation. So the LATM devices constructed by contractor, workers struck by errant vehicle, category construction, likelihood possible, impact of someone or a worker to be hit in that area, catastrophic, initial risk rating extreme. So a couple of control measures could be possible: reduce lane width, construction within half the road. So that would be staging the construction, close off the median lane and reduce speed, obviously, and traffic management, which would help. Action by a contractor. Should we do that? The likelihood would be unlikely, impact major, risk potentially still high. And that's the first one. Second hazard would be working within the road verge, so residents entering and exiting their driveways, potential conflicts within with works on verge, so pedestrians as well coming and going. During construction, likelihood possible, impact moderate, initial risk rating high. So spotters would be required to monitor residents and pedestrians coming and going. Would also need adequate signage installed. This would be action by contractor. Likelihood would be unlikely, impact moderate, residual risk rating medium, and that's what we came up with in our allocated time.
Thank you. That's great. That second one, that's around residents entering and exiting driveways, conflict with workers on verge, I see. So yeah, so that's a sort of a variant of that traffic management law, impact. I was initially, when you mentioned that, I thought, oh, well, maybe it's to do with vehicles exiting their driveways, and there might be an open exposed trench or something like that. So because there's I'm not sure how much you could dive into the plans. There's a lot of PUP and a lot of drainage. There's drainage. I guess the project is LATM and stormwater, so there'd be some excavation. There'd be some open trenches there at some point, and that's a good one because you've got. I was thinking of residents sort of coming and going, crossing the verge. There'll be some, potentially some open trenching there. So just managing that risk as well could sort of fall under that category. What is it? LATM, local area traffic management, is LATM. So yeah, the scheme was. So just going back a little bit, the scheme was some local area traffic management devices. So islands in the roads, some landscape within those islands as well, just to reduce, I guess, provide a lower speed, encourage a lower speed environment there, and also some longitudinal sort of stormwater drainage, so some new drainage pipes as well. Okay. So I think one of the other groups here identified some of the potential risks in working around services, PUP, when that drainage work has been undertaken, because it's an area where a lot of services exist, and I guess that that installation of that drainage pipe is pretty close to some of those live services. So there was obviously in terms of control measures around the risk of striking services. It was potholing, I guess, and also I guess de-energizing, I guess, in the case of power, some of that network whilst the works were underway, ongoing there. Yeah, it's just some of the risks identified for that project. So wonderful. That was Andrew. Thanks, Andrew, for that one. Okay, so last group here, group 5. So that was the fauna infrastructure at Eatonsill. It's Chris, Elena, Grace, and Ryan.
Yep.
We got Ryan. So this project is some.
Can you see that now? Or am I showing the wrong screen?
I think the wrong screen. That one.
We can see multiple of Paul.
Oh no!
Enough. Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing and try again because I thought I selected the right screen.
That's okay.
Screen 3. Screen 3. There we go.
Oh, perfect. And just to recap the project, Ron, for everyone, for all the viewers.
Yeah. Sure. So this is essentially a fauna crossing project in like kind of unyieldy terrain on a state-controlled road. Yeah, it's just probably not somewhere ideal to work, but I don't really know. I didn't really think about what I was going to say for this part.
No, I think that's fair. I think it was, yeah, it's sort of reserve, I think, and there's a creek, I guess, that runs under the road, Eaton's Crossing Road. There's a bridge, and that fauna infrastructure is post and rail infrastructure along that creek line, but also a aerial rope bridge as well under the road bridge, and some fauna fencing. So everyone can get a bit of an idea in their mind. So yep, sorry, over to you again, Ryan.
Yeah, so we kind of more focused on the filling out the Word doc than so much the spreadsheet, but we got there eventually.
That's all right. Well,
we kind
you
of
take us through both if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we kind of identified first of all the ways that the structure could be a workplace. So we've got things like the maintenance moving forwards, or even just people doing like maintenance stuff in the adjacent area. Obviously, the people actually constructing the infrastructure, and road users, and there's a car park nearby. People using that in the vicinity. For actual hazards, we've got things like, I don't know, just there's so many more, but like working in proximity to vehicles on a 70 km/h road. There's working at height. There's working in a confined space for the underpass aspect. There's slopes, unstable ground, flooding, snakes. It can go on. And we just tried to think of all the ones that were most relevant to this. For the SID group consultation members. Like pretty much everything that other people have said for other projects is relevant, but like we so for the ones we put in the safety and design risk assessment spreadsheet, we kind of did it last minute, so we just chucked in working at height and the vehicle ones. So obviously, like there's aside from the actual terrain itself being elevated in places, like presumably someone's going to need to be elevated doing the actual work at some point as well. So like that's likelihood that there could be an extreme risk based on the matrix, I think, based on someone could get seriously injured. So we just said barriers and like a safety harness system, that's specifically designed for situations like this, would be required. And if stuff like that was implemented, then the risk would be lessened to an adequate standard, given that it is reasonably dangerous work to start off with. And the same, I guess, situation with the working in proximity to vehicles. There's a likely chance that something catastrophic could happen theoretically. So by reducing the speed limit, putting in barriers, possibly even lane closure, depending on what needs to happen, that will also lower the risk to something that's considered acceptable.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm really impressed by the detail in the Word document. I think that surpasses any other group that we've seen through any of the other webinars we've delivered. So well done there. Did you have, out of interest, anyone that was involved in that project? Because you seem to have covered everything. Appreciated the type of project quite well there. Do you have a?
If someone did, they didn't speak up about it.
Okay.
No, there was only two groups that didn't have anyone involved in their projects, and this was one, and I think group 3 was the other one.
Yep.
One did, 2 did. Yeah, group 3 was the other one, the bioretention. So there was 2 groups that didn't have anyone involved in the project.
Yeah, I don't know if we've got enough prizes to give one to everyone in that group, but I think that's quite impressive. Appreciation of having not seen the design till just today or even yesterday if you got in early, but you wouldn't have known what group you were in. So yeah, well done there. I think a couple of the other hazards, and you've picked them up in your risk context. So I guess if you had if you're doing the project for real, then you would have sort of moved those into your risk assessment, your risk register. So the work was around the creek, and you've identified the unlevel sort of surface that someone would be working in or around. So the stability of the ground as your plant machinery was accessing the site would be a risk. Flood hazard, yeah, I think one of the other groups might have identified that, works adjacent to a creek. I don't think anyone's picked up the confined spaces, so that was another good hazard there, because I think one of the post and rails was going through an existing culvert. So yeah, it's very extensive, and your listing of safety and design consultation group members also good there, including TMR, as it's a TMR state controlled road. It's a good idea, and also some thought given to some of the other maybe adjacent uses. So someone maintaining the adjacent park, those park users as well, because I guess the access to the worksite would be through that car park area. So considering the exposure of others to the work that's been undertaken is also important. So yeah, nice one.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, so that's all our 5 groups there. I'm going to try and reshare my screen to share. There we go. So I'll just skip through these. So we've sort of gone through the first, all our group exercises. So wonderful. Thank you for that. And just one more thing to point out is around information transfer. So if you've done all that work, you've formed your safety and design consultation group, and everyone's come together and worked on that risk assessment. It's important to get all that information and that work transferred to those people that will need it in the later stages of a project life cycle. So part of that information transfer will include the project documentation, obviously any work method statements that have been developed, if there's any specific ways that the work should be undertaken, that needs to be transferred, as well as your safety and design report. So that's the main report from concept and detailed design that will form all the safety and design assessment. All your considerations will be captured in that report, and that's the one that's important to make accessible and to transfer that to people involved in the later stages of a project's life cycle. When I'm saying that information should be easily accessible, so there's many ways to transfer information these days. So what we don't want is that the safety and design report is transferred and sits on someone's hard drive or SharePoint or whatever information system exists, and then it sort of stays there and doesn't get to the people that actually need to see it. So you could think about ways of transferring that information that is outside of a report. It could be, you still need to do the report, but taking out the key risk from that report and maybe putting it on a drawing that's more easily accessible, putting it on a notice board in a grid hut where there are workers, again, could be a way that you can achieve that. So just be mindful that you've done all the work, you've put the thought in, make sure it gets to the people that will need it. And this is getting us towards the end of module 2. So just to re-emphasize all the tasks that are involved in the safety and design process. So identifying the design context and the risk context, identifying the skills needed to have that full picture of design knowledge for your project, bring in any specialist advice, and form your consultation group with those designers and your workers. So it's what you've, I guess, identified in theory through those small group exercises. Undertake that initial risk assessment, and then bring that whole group together to review the risks that you've identified initially, and also add new risks. Important to do that before 50% design progression in your concept and your detailed design, and then review that again at 90% design completion before you're wrapping everything up. So to review, I guess, progress made in addressing those safety and design risks. The outcome of that, as I just mentioned, is your safety and design report for concept and detailed design. If it is a planning project you're working on, you'll undertake a summary of safety and design considerations, and that will go into your project planning report or some sort of similar sort of planning report. And that brings us to the end of our content for module 2 and the end of our content for the safety and design training. Just for Loretta, we might just refresh everyone on their LMS and things you need to do to sort of officially complete the training.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I will just bring up the learning management system again. So just to quickly run over what you need to do to complete the course. So hopefully you have completed module 1, the quiz, and today's module 2, there is also a quiz. So ensure that you're clicking on the quiz and attempting that quiz and answering all the questions, and hopefully you get them all correct. Otherwise, you do have 3 attempts to get them correct. If not, let me know. I might be able to help you out. But after that, in order to get a certificate of completion of the course, firstly, you need to fill out a feedback form. So please give us your feedback. I say, all feedback is good feedback. So clicking on the course feedback and answering the questions by clicking there. And then the other thing, if you wanted to, if you're on LinkedIn or whatever sort of social platform, if you wanted to share that you have actually completed this course, we encourage you to share it online. So we've made it easy for you. If you click here, it'll take you to a series of badges where you can simply, I'll just click on it to show you quickly, and you can easily share it to your network. So if you're on LinkedIn, for instance, if we find safety in design, we click on here and you can share it on whatever platform you would like. And there's also some words that you can use if you wanted to copy and paste them onto your post. So that's that. And then once you have completed that feedback form, you will then have access to your certificate. So you can download that and show all your peers. That is all for that. And then, of course, the prizes, so there are prizes that will come your way. So we will send the prizes to Marco. So Marco will distribute them, but we have kept a list of all the prizes. I think you'll clean me out of my supply. But no, we have kept everyone's, names that won prizes throughout the 2 sessions, and they will be posted out to Marco.
And then I'll have to somehow distribute them, but let's see what happens.
Okay. You don't have a drone that you can,
Well, there's only so many pairs of socks I can wear, so yeah. I'll keep the ones that I like and I'll hand out the others, and I'll just say, talk to Loretta where the other prizes are. So.
But that's.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Loretta. Thanks, Marco, for organising that too.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. If you got any issues with, completing the course, send me an email, and myself or Marissa. I'm Loretta or Marissa. We'll get back to you and help you out. So no dramas.
Wonderful. Okay. Thanks everyone for being great participants, interacting with us and making this one enjoyable. So
thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Very much.
Take care. Bye.
See you later.
Thank you.